All right. Cool. Yeah, so let's get this thing rolling as usual. Do a little intro for the video's sake for folks joining in and watching this video later. They may not know what the virtual brown bag is all about, so let's talk about it. First and foremost, we record these videos, so as we encourage people to share things and experiences, if you're sharing anything, just make sure you're not sharing anything that could get you in trouble, right, with clients, employers. Keep that in mind. The virtual brown bag is a place where we share tips and tricks, experiences, frustrations, difficulties, things that we've learned the hard way. So we figure, we might as well share with others and, help people out that way. We do this every Thursday, 12 to 1 Central Time here on Skype. Anybody and everybody willing to share or learn or doing both are more than welcome to join in. We have been all over the map as far as what we've shared over the years here, so everything is pretty much fair game sharing here. Or, okay, not maybe everything. That's too broad of a statement. We have the virtualbrownbag.com website where we always keep a link to the meeting here so people know where to join in. We have the Twitter, we have Slack where we can continue on with some of the conversations, expand on conversations and things like that. And you can also find the links to the previous meetings with a little description as to what we talked in those meetings. You can find that on the website. For today, we actually do have a main theme to discuss. Last week, we talked about resumes, what to put on resumes, what not to put on resumes, how people read those resumes. And then we still had like a lot more to talk about, or so it felt like. And we decided that today we would be also focusing on that, maybe expanding a little more on that, or maybe talking about like job interviews, which we haven't touched on last week. So anything you guys feel like sharing around that topic, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's just make sure that we've had our fill of talking about resumes and see if anybody wants to bring anything new up with that. Um, so we had a real lively discussion on that.
Right?
Yeah, it was good. I've
It was
actually since gone through and recommended some grads don't put pictures on their resumes. So
right.
yeah, that was an interesting one.
It was. I don't think I've ever put a photo on a resume. I don't remember seeing a resume with a photo on it. As I,
Yeah.
done with it last week, I'm like, I don't remember seeing a resume with a photo on it. What would I make out of it? And then I thought myself, it's like, well, if somebody picks up my resume, like I don't like using the your common like businessy type of headshot for things, with
Hmm.
suit and tie and all that because that's not really me. So if I put that on my resume, I'm not really selling who Claudio is. At the same token, if I put like my quote unquote rock star that I
Hmm.
normally use for conferences and things, will people take me less seriously because they are judging me by the way I look and they're not giving me the chance? Okay, talk first, and then you think about the appearances, right?
Well, maybe I'm just
So
so
I
disconnected, but like this is Dev. I'd go with the Rockstar one rather than the. I mean, and not just because the term Rockstar, which is stupid and I hate it, but
right.
like because that's the one that showcases you as having confidence and a personality and as someone who'd be more interested to as an add to the team. So I'd
Right.
almost say that. But the other interesting thing I was thinking about, so like if the concern is that the resume, a photo on your resume can contribute to bias, and for lots of large companies as a showstopper right away. Which sure, I accept that might be in the rules, but that makes no damn sense because we also put our GitHub and our websites on there, and that has your photo a lot of the time.
The-
And we encourage people to go look at them. In fact, we say people really should. So
Yeah, but the filtering process is a lot faster. So,
yeah.
I have a good friend of mine, Robert Hernandez. He's building like a really cool hiring platform, and he's gathered all kinds of statistics from uh, both job searchers as well as hiring managers. And yeah, one thing he's found out is that hiring managers filter somebody out in 6 seconds, right?
Right.
So It's if you have that picture on there, if you're not privileged like we are to be, white, for example, right, and dudes as well, you can get filtered out really fast, and so that's why like every HR department that I've worked at every company has always made sure that that never happens. So yeah, I mean, it's I get your point. It's I completely understand. Like yeah, you can, if you want to know what a person looks like, yeah, you will find out. But that initial 6 second filtering process is interesting. If you want to learn more about these stats, check out Pounce. It's POUN.SE. That's the hiring platform that my good friend Rob is building, and then he's got a blog and POUN.SE, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I wasn't like arguing against that. Like I said, I totally buy it.
Yeah.
It just seems like, well, hold on a second.
There
are many things that don't make sense that we kind of have to do, but
yeah.
If you look on the flip side, though, like I mean, let's say you didn't put your photo there, but then people like like Claudio and I, like the immigrants, we have like non-conventional names, right? So like there can be, I mean, it's been scientifically proven that those things can be grounds for like dismissing resumes as well. So on the flip side, if you're looking for a job, maybe it's a good thing, like that because do you really want to work at a company where they can just like, your resume is just eliminated because of the way your name sounds like, or because of the way you look? I don't know, just like thinking out loud. Because in my experience, I mean, I've been in positions where I was able to, hire people for the projects as a technical lead. Maybe it's my like lack of skills with the hiring manager and stuff, but all the resumes that I've got, I couldn't just like eliminate any one of them. I mean, phone screen, yes, you talk to the person a little bit, and then you like immediately know, like it's definitely not like 6 seconds, but like looking at a resume. But like the only time that I was able to eliminate somebody by just looking at their resume, because they had the whole world in their resume. C++, Java, C, assembly, C#, JavaScript, and it's like the expert in all of these. I was like, this is just not possible. I can go in the trash. But other than that, resumes have not really been very effective, at least for me, to just like eliminate candidates.
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge I face too. Like I call that the acronym soup, and especially working with recruiters. I've worked with a lot of recruiting firms who will pad the crap out of resumes with like extra acronyms, and it's funny because like I'd be chatting with candidates, and we're talking candidly about things, and I'm like, wow, I noticed you put XSLT on there. Like, did you really like work with that? Because I did, but I didn't know anybody else had, right? And no, the recruiter put that in there for I'm like, okay, wow, all right,
yeah, and that's why you send in as PDF.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I will say I don't think it's necessarily fair to say like, well, do you want to work at a company that would do that? Because if you're talking, the type of thing that we're talking about is like when someone's like scanning 10 resumes a second and they're just kind of sorting them in files. Like that's not a policy. That's like an inert, like a internal bias that one person has, and we all have internal biases. Like I'm certain that if I sat down on a bias test, in fact I've done it before, and be like, crap, I have that bias apparently, right? So it would manifest in that sort of scenario. I don't think that can be an indictment of the company or the process. They might even be trying to improve it. There's just like sometimes not any great ways around it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you mentioned, George, about we may not put like photos on resumes, but then we put GitHub accounts and things like that, and people can or go like on social media, like search people on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can pretty much see what that person's life is all about. And I'm totally fine with that because my thing is normally the following. Just like judging somebody by what they have on the resume. I mean, the resume does not tell the whole story, right? So, for example, one thing that I've personally changed in the way that I've done presentations, for example, in the past, whenever we have like a slide deck, usually that first or second slide is like, about me. And then there's like your photo, and there's like your qualifications, all your certifications and your awards and blah, blah, blah. A lot of that. And I used to have all of that. Oh my God, yeah, MVP and MCSD and blah, 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 blah. I got rid of all of that because it's like, yes, there's all this technical stuff, but I do see myself as somebody who don't just get tied up all the technical stuff. It's like, I'm just starting this talk. You're going to be hearing me talk about the technical stuff for an hour. Before we get there, let me tell you about me, who I'm all about. So I bring up, I ride, fast bikes at a racetrack. I play music and I have my family. There's a human behind that because at the end of a talk, I figure that it's easier for somebody, for the attendees, to remember me by what I am as opposed to what I know, right? Because like, oh yeah, I was sitting in a talk that this guy was talking about C#, and he's an MVP, and he's an executive at whatever company. Yeah, whatever. Oh no, I was sitting at that talk that the long-haired dude, he also plays the guitar. Did you see his photo? That was fun, man. Yeah, he talked also about, it just makes you being more memorable in people's mind. So I actually do enjoy looking people up outside of their resume to see not necessarily what the person looks like, physically, but what is this person about? What does this person get excited about?
So you got to be super careful there, especially in the United States, because you do not want to get into a candidate's aspects of their personal lives, right? So you should not know anything about their marital status, their religious beliefs, like all those things. You should not know about them. You should not ask them about it, and you should definitely not research on your own, during the interview process, because that there's for really good reasons, there are very good protections in place to prevent discrimination. And then if you kind of find yourself looking something up about a candidate and then you bring it up in conversation, oh, I notice you have 3 kids, in the conversation, that will get you in legal trouble really, really fast. Not to mention that there are good reasons for those legal. It's for the protection of candidates, of course, so to prevent discrimination.
Yeah.
Wait, something like how many kids do you have? I thought it was just if about any of the protected classes or something like that.
Having your how many kids you have is absolutely part of the protected
Really?
class. Oh yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and if the interviewee brings things up, that's fine.
Yeah.
You should be asking those questions.
Right.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
If you're the interviewer, you don't ask about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Keep it focused on the job.
Yep.
Okay. But then also, like, if we're encouraging people to put hobbies on their resumes, that counts as bringing it up. But if the resume has a link to their website and their website talks about that same thing, that would not be.
It's
kosher?
iffy.
I'm not even sure that's gray area. I'm not even going to, because I'm not sure I see the line at all.
I would leave it alone. Like really, and even if a candidate does bring up kind of a personal topic, like that's happened to me a few times, I just kind of nod and pivot back to the purely professional discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So would you, in your case, then say having hobbies on a resume is a waste of space for that specific situation?
I mean, a lot of people put hobbies. It's interesting. I don't care personally as a hiring manager. Like I don't care. But it's
Yeah, I think that one of the problems we have is that we expect resumes to do like double and triple duty for a bunch of different scenarios, like for filtering, for reading in depth, for what for the spec sheet that the person interviewing you has in front of them. Those are all pretty different scenarios, but we're expecting one document to serve all three. And there's more than three, really. Like I said, at my old company, we were like searching resumes in order to just to find buzzwords in them, so that we would know if we could, look at someone as fitting a particular project. In that case, the only thing the resume needed was buzzwords. Like everything else was superfluous. So yeah, like I feel like we use resume. We have this tool of a resume, and it's a bad fit for any of the many jobs we ask them for. We try to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole art and science to making an effective resume. I can't say I figured it out. I can't say I've researched it myself. I have come across a lot of resumes. I personally don't put that much weight on resumes. Frankly, I'm not. It's been a long time since I found myself in a position to have like a stack of resumes to look at. I'm happy when I get anybody applying for any position that I put out there. And so but I've been in situations where I get several. I'll pretty much phone screen everybody, so because I don't put that much weight on the resume, because I've had really outstanding people who just don't know how to sell themselves, and I've had people who really sell themselves really well on the resume, and then when I talk to them on the phone, it's just absolutely just terrible. So I'll speak to pretty much everybody. If I ever get to a point where I get thousands of resumes, yeah, okay, maybe, but that's just not my case. So
yeah, that's what I recommend too, generally. But and then like people are like, well, what about the situation you get 400 resumes? It's like, so take 300 of them and put them in the trash. Like, okay, like if that's fair, you're not biased. You're just cutting people down. Also, you don't then further waste 399 people's time with like code challenges and stuff like that. Like, take 3/4 of them, put them in the trash. You consider the other people.
yeah. So and I don't know if you want to segue into the kind of interview process a little bit, because I've done something that's worked pretty well so far for my last few hires, and it's basically a paired coding exercise, really. So in my team we do test driven development. That's just one of our methodologies, and so I designed like a kata, an exercise, and we just kind of both sit at my computer, using the same tools that we use every day on the team, and I got some tests kind of laid out with just kind of the test method names with nothing in them, and we just kind of discuss what it's about and kind of how to go about it, right? And so the candidate starts filling out the test and start out filling out the code, but the tone is a lot more of a collaborative relationship, right? They're kind of talking about their thought process, and I'm coaching them a little bit through the process. Like with every candidate I've worked through, I've literally they've walked away having learned a good number of things, and it's it's a lot more fun. And the thing that I also do is, ahead of that, I literally give them a ton of resources on to learn. I mean, basically, I'll give them links to pretty much ace the thing once they get here, because that tells me another thing as well, is whether they'll take the time to just come, look at it, learn anything ahead of coming to the interview, and then once they're there, what have they retained, and then once you start down the process, it's kind of like, how is it to interact with this person, right? Like, are they responsive to feedback? Are they able to, verbalize their thoughts? And it's a short collaboration session, which can really help signal a number of things, which Good so far.
Um, yeah. So I think let's shift to talking about interviewing because that's interesting. Can I just personal thing? I don't like how the word kata has just become synonymous with code challenges because I remember when that term was introduced to the world of programming, and at the time it was like everyone constantly referenced martial arts and how it's supposed to be like in martial arts, and the purpose was not here's a code challenge, solve it. It was
A re-
here's a here's a challenge, and you're not solving, you might even know the solution already, you're doing it over and over and over again and striving for perfection both algorithmically and even just down to the point of hitting the right keys at the right time.
Yep.
So it was about like training the muscle memory. It's not about doing code challenges, and I feel like the term has kind of gotten abused and now we no longer have a term for the thing that we originally meant. So just
Yeah.
personal beef with that,
That's
but yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That
Yeah.
exercise is an exercise that I have repeated many times over
Yeah.
to try find better and optimal ways to do it. However, yes, when it is presented to the candidate at first, it is the first time that they're seeing it. So yes, it probably fits more of a definition of a exercise, but technically it is a kata because
From your point of view, yeah.
so
Yeah. Um, so I have lots of thoughts on interviewing code challenges. But I want to give other people a chance to talk first because I have a whole presentation on it. Do you do code challenges, Claudio? When you do interviews?
I am not big into the whole code challenge thing. What I like is sharing some like existing code, like even if it's like made up sample code based off of, okay, this is normally what you find in the real world, and having the person talk through it, right? Like, okay, you're presented with this code here. Yeah, you are given a user story where it's going to make you come into that code and make changes. Walk me through. Like, I want to hear how the person is going to approach that task at hand, right? What is the thought process? What does the person care about? What does the person think of the current code, right? Does it look good? Does it look bad? If it looks bad, does it bother you? What kind of changes would you make to make it better? Would you make a change to make it better? Is it something you would do or not, right? And I like more having this kind of conversation. That's what works best for me.
So I'm going to have
Go
to
ahead.
drop off here in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to share a couple of questions that I found over the last 30 years that have really worked well for me. One of them I like to ask is, tell me about a tough technical challenge that you solved and how you went about solving it. To me, that's my favorite question because it gives me an idea of what somebody's level is. There's no right or wrong answer to that sort of thing. And it tells me how well they can express what was the problem, how did they solve it, why did it matter, and the things that are important to them. And then I like to ask people like, tell me something you did that you're proud of.
Yeah.
Go
Can
ahead,
I just add, like, the immediate follow-up for that for that first question should be, tell me about a technical challenge you didn't solve, and that you had to leave outstanding, or find another way around.
I have asked that a couple of times. I have not found it as effective diagnostically. Like what I'm looking for in interviews, like, is this person a fit for the role I'm interviewing them for?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different roles in software development that I don't think really have this. I mean, even corporate developer versus a consultant, I have a different way of approaching that. But that one I think works pretty well for everybody. The thing I love about asking people tell me something you've done that you're proud of. It gives me an idea of what motivates them about being a developer. You get a different answer for every person you ask that to, and to me it's really interesting. And then if I'm trying to get an idea of their technical skills, I'll pick something on their resume that I know a lot about, and I'll just ask them like, "What's the hardest problem you ever had with that? Whether you fixed it or not, just tell me what was the hardest problem you ran into." Um, and again, it tells you a lot. If somebody's got, oh, I'll just pick a random thing, entity framework, on their resume, and they tell you that the hardest problem they've ever had was, you know, figuring out how to do an include. That's a different level of using entity framework than if they tell you, well, we had this problem, we're going to use an interceptor, and and so I have found those really helpful. I'll just leave those out there. If you ever interview with me, you'll get those questions.
My first question is always, you worked on a lot of tech. What do you enjoy working with? That's just a warm-up question. Almost don't care what they answer to that. That's just to get them comfortable talking. Second question is, what do you dislike working with? And I feel that tends to give me a lot of insight into someone's kind of view of themselves as a developer, and how reflective they are. And I feel like I feel like there's that also kind of like these kind of reversible questions. Is kind of why I said it to there. I are a very good technique. Are a technique that I use a lot, where I ask the question, kind of negate the premise, and ask the opposite. And I don't know. I feel like I've gotten some good information out of them, but your mileage may vary. What I did want to throw into like the job seekers though. So John just said a bunch of questions that pretty similar to a bunch of questions that other people had. What motivates you? Why do you do this? Why did you get into software? Here's what it is. So this is something we're doing with all our candidates at Operation Spark now. Everyone should do this if you're seeking a job. Write down the answers to all those. They're going to be asked in every single code interview. You might as well have them ready to go and not and ah through it. In fact, they're going to be asked in a lot of forms, so you can copy paste. In fact, that's going to form the basis of your cover letter. So just kind of, I'll run through the type of things I always recommend people answer. I have it written down right here. So the questions are, why tech, why coding, what motivates you, what is your personal history of programming, if any, and in our case, we're from boot camp, so why did you choose to put yourself through this and go through a boot camp? So like we just tell people like that's write up a personal narrative that at least answers those questions in a way that you'd be like proud of and have a good pattern. It doesn't have to be an essay, it could be a couple sentences, but you want to get those answers down. And then we also ask them to do a professional narrative, which answers questions like, how do you see yourself as fitting within like the overall technical landscape? What specific technical strengths do you feel like you have? How do you keep up with the field? What are your professional aspirations, and what steps have you taken on the path to achieving those aspirations? So if you have all those questions written down and ready to go, you review it before you jump on the interview, like some of those questions are going to come up and you're going to have really good responses.
Al persists, to make more money is a perfectly fine answer.
Yes, it is. I mean, it might eliminate you from some jobs or people want something else, but if their goals and your goals are so disaligned, then maybe that's an issue. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably say a few more things, but make more money. It's, I've had plenty of people answer like, yeah, to make more money, and then like kind of give a more thoughtful answer. Like I've never counted that against anyone.
Yeah, I wouldn't give that as the, your sole answer. I mean, it's totally great motivation to have, to do what we do, and that's pretty much assumed by everybody, right? Like it's kind of like they're probably going to want to, there are the kind of optics of it kind of during a conversation. You want to, be able to give something a little bit more thoughtful than that, right? It's really not to invalidate that motivation, because it's absolutely a great motivation to have for sure, right? But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I want to go back to coding challenges. So I don't like giving coding challenges, but I always do because, like I said, I've done hundreds of interviews. At one point, we had some really big misses that a coding interview would have caught, where people talked a really good game, could actually talk about code, but when it came to writing code, they were just lost. And it was very strange. It's not even a mindset I fully understand, but like where these people are coming from. But it's something that just we had a couple of specific instances I'm thinking of where we were just like, well, we have to introduce that check. And actually, so we do a coding. Well, I do recommend doing a coding exercise. I was doing one when I was at Surge. Um, I ran into people fairly, like maybe 1 in 10 people would like object to and say I don't do coding exercises of those. Like basically I would reply with like, look, I totally understand. I understand there's like a pushback against it. There are specific reasons why we do this. I'm with you on this on the pushback, but we try to run this a little differently. Specifically, well, and I think every time, but like maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times, someone like people said, no, that's it. I'm not going to progress. 2 of those people, I'm pretty sure, were scammers who like just had a fancy resume, but then would like outsource stuff to like Vietnam or something if you give them work. Um, but so what I actually do for my coding exercise, I think it's very, very important that you respect people's times. And the best way that I can think of doing that is that you have to donate, give at least as much time as they do, which means live coding, because you're there on the call. You do have to make sure you get the right interviewer, that they're not an asshole, that there's someone who's eager to talk through a problem, eager to propose different approaches, eager to help you along with it. Because yeah, it might take people a little while to get comfortable or to start talking or stuff like that. So it's something you have to practice and you have to try to be good at, and ideally keep it short. Like all the coding challenges I always do could, in the ideal case, be solved with a couple lines of code. And another caveat that I always have in the coding, I don't just ask one problem, but then I always change requirements partway through. So great, you know, you got solutions now. There's actually further requirements that are added. Okay, how do you incorporate these new requirements into the solution that you created previously? And so I always make sure that that's part of the question. So if you know they had to write like a tree traversal algorithm, and I don't say write a tree traversal algorithm. I try to relate it to something like real. You have a tree of people, right, where each person has a mother and a father, which are also persons, right? And so then like you might ask questions about it. So if they wrote a little function that they have to do that, maybe ask them to write another function, how to refactor things in such a way that traversing the tree is isolated in one location, whereas the thing that you're doing at each node is pulled out. So yeah, that's one of the things I always do is because I want to see how they think about refactoring and keeping clean code.
Yeah, I will
Yeah,
say I have run into the same issue you did with because I used to do like mostly abstract interviews where we just kind of talk through concepts, and yeah, I've run into a couple of people who spoke really well, and then when I hired them and then give them and they started, and it was super painful for them to code. It was just kind of startling. So yeah, that's kind of why, for the same reason you did. Um, and I agree with you, like doing it live, like in person, and that's kind of why I'm trying to present this more as a paired coding exercise, because we're kind of jointly trying to solve a challenge together.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, hey, here's the exercise, I'm just going to watch you type it, right? At least it kind of gives more of a collaboration feel to the whole process, which it really is, and it helps them learn about us, about me, right? If we're going to work together, if this person is going to choose to work with us, they need to know what it's like to work with us, right? And so I think it definitely works both ways a lot. And I found candidates in the process will just ask very thoughtful questions in the process. So.
Yeah, and I think the kind of process you propose is perfectly fine too. Just so I think we're getting at the same thing there.
Yeah.
So many things are popping in my mind now, and hearing what you guys are saying and following what's happening on the chat there about like giving a home assignment type of thing.
I hate it.
And I was gonna bring up when Chris brought it up, like giving something or giving like a list of resources for people to research prior to the interview and things like that. Wouldn't something like that be reaching into their personal lives to see what they do on their personal time?
I didn't think of it that way, but that's interesting. It's really, I just give them an email with a couple of links where they can learn more about test-driven development, a couple of videos, some sites, really, and some things that if they choose to, they can practice on their own, but it's not, required. And what I'm interested in is to see have they read anything? When they get there, did they read any of it? And it's stuff that it's stuff that everything that my team and I work together, we use every day, right? It's all stuff that we've taken the time to learn, and so I'm trying to basically put them in a position to succeed the interview. That's all I'm trying to do, right?
Sure.
But I do get your point. It's kind of like, oh well, it could be considered as a form of homework. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, that sucks.
I would actually not do that because it doesn't respect their time.
And you can go so many ways with that. Like one of the reasons why I personally don't like giving like code challenges during the interview is that if I flip the chairs, I suck at those. Many times when I see like the little code challenges that people give at interviews, I see myself like I would suck at that interview because when I'm like put on a spot like that, I don't work well with that. So I'm a slow learner. It takes me time to actually grok what's happening, finding the whys. Why is it that it is important to write this code? What is the actual problem that we are trying to solve? Should I tell the interviewer, hey, I get it that you're telling me to implement this, but am I allowed to ask you, why are we implementing this? Why is this important? Why are we writing this code to begin with? Right? Which to me, I personally think that's more important.
Right.
Having like a developer who actually asks for the why as opposed to, oh yeah, you asked me to do this, I will just do it.
Right. But that's why I frame mine as a paired programming exercise, right? Oh. We're both literally sitting in front of the computer and we start a dialogue about the thing that they're looking at, right? And at that point, it's kind of like, yeah.
So I would be perfectly fine with that. I will say I've been in interviews where they've given me coding exercises and stuff like that, and I've started asking about it, and they were totally not fine with it. And I'd be like, well, okay, you're asking me, but this is a really silly way to implement this thing to begin with. Like, why would you not just, calculate that data at the source, and why would you want to calculate it after the fact? And you were just like, no, you're completely throwing us off.
Well, and yeah. It's like, for me, if that was the case, like where I'm asking the interviewer and they take a step back, I'm like, all right, I'm done here. See you next time. It's like
I flew all the way out to New York for it. So yeah, no, I mean, I get it, but like, I would always go back to that. But yeah, I think that's I think at some point you have to accept the premise, right? So again, if like, I'm trying not to like give out specifically the problems I've used before, but like if you do have like a tree like the kind that I described, someone could realistically say, well, I mean, in real life, wouldn't this all be in the database and this would be a matter of a simple select query? And yeah, probably. But also, the reason I'm presenting you with this problem is because, presumably we've all had to work with tree structures. They're everywhere in programming at some point in time. So we do have some reflexes built up on how to work with tree structures. And I'm just trying to take, a problem that I've run into and dilute it into a common domain that we can talk about, that domain being people, because we both understand they have parents. And that's why it's this problem. The reason it's not in the database is because not all tree problems go in the database, and I'm just trying to pick one and present it to you. Like the answer, that's the thing. Like, I spent a lot of time thinking through why exactly the problems I pick are the ones that they are, and how to phrase them and how to structure them, and always have at least 3 different ways of discussing the problem. So if they're just glossing over and not getting it, by me talking about an abstract, okay, I'll switch over and talk about specifics, write out a specific example. If they're still not getting it, I'll relate it to some actual experience that I or they have had. And because people kind of perceive data in different ways, and you kind of need different ways of proposing it. But yeah, you need to think hard about it.
Yeah.
But and a lot of people don't, but some people do. And then, so I think I would have welcomed someone questioning it, but ultimately, I would want them to attempt it, even if I have to help them get started or something like that. That's fine. Even if it's in pseudocode, even if it's whatever.
Sure.
I don't want people, again, take home problems. So I was looking for a job starting last October until this January, and I mean, I got so many take-home exercises, and I'm good at them. I'm great at them. I rock through them, and I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna research something new and find and learn how to do raw WebSockets or something like that. But it just takes up so much time, even if you're not doing that. Even those code challenges, the ones that respect your time most are well, this is just an hour. That still takes up my time, a good chunk of my time, to the point where there was stuff that I needed to get done around the house, and my wife's you're not even working. What are you doing? I was I'm literally got 3 hours of code challenges and 3 hours of interviews today, 3.5 hours of interviews, and the rest of it is prep. I'm spending more time working now than I was when I was working.
So the code challenges were offline, not during the interview. So you had 1 hour code challenge plus 1 hour interview.
Wow. Right. Ones that are either sent out to you, or ones that either as a screener or as a project to complete, and so stuff like that. I worry about it not respecting people's time. And again, you have to put a multiplier on that, because if you're sending if you can commit to interviewing the person, and you're going to look at their code and really talk about it and really give them a code review, fine, I understand that. Although I've had that personally go wrong too, where I did a whole project, saw somebody, and then the guy was asking me for it, and he clearly didn't get why I was doing some of the things, or why I made something, and I explained to him, and he'd just gloss over that and be well, I would have used enzyme tests. I'm no, you don't need to bring in a whole other framework. This is a 2-liner to stub out. So I think that's tough. I'd be more willing if you're guaranteed you'll get an interview and a chance to talk about the project. If you aren't getting that, then what the heck are they? What the heck is the point, right? Then you're wasting. Look how many people's times you're wasting. And just ethically, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's why I think we're in alignment that doing it in person, right? And then it's more of a dialogue. It's definitely more helpful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that it can make people nervous to work on it. But first of all, you could that's pretty easy to drill. Of all the different things of interview prep, getting comfortable writing code in a time pressure situation like that, is, especially if someone's like, you can use pseudocode, you can ask me questions, whatever. Like, that's like the easiest thing to actually prep yourself for within that world. Like, because that's like, you just do a toy problem every couple of days. Right. And within a week or two, you'll be fine. So, yeah. That's where I come down on that.
Sure. Yeah, something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is like when evaluating these things is thinking like from a developer standpoint. As developers, we tend to spend way more time reading and changing code than writing code. That's why I've been favoring like seeing how the person is gonna be changing code, because even like, great, we are following, test first, test-driven development. So we do red, green refactor. You write the code, you make the test pass. What do you do next? You change the code, right? And I want to capture the thing like, okay, like when I write that first passing test, the code looks nasty, right? I write whatever it takes to make the thing pass, which could mean like a lot of hard-coded stuff, some classes that are disgusting, because I'm waiting for my test to pass to then make my changes, right? And refactor into something decent. That's what I'm trying to capture from the candidates. Like, okay, now that you got some, passing codes, some work, how are you going to change it? How are you going to make it better so that later when we come in to make changes to this code, what am I going to find, right? Because that's another problem, right? You have this one developer who can get stuff done. He's going to, produce the features and stuff. The guy leaves the company, and then whoever else needs to pick up his work is like, oh my goodness, what is this, right? So like preventing or like paying forward. So this is another thing that I've been putting a lot of thought into. What do you guys think?
So specifically about like refactoring and reading code.
Yeah, it's like, what is the type of care that people take into the code that they write?
Yeah, I feel like that comes out when you talk to people about code. So when I built my interviewing process at Surge, like it was kind of based on the simple premise that like if you go to a coding meetup and if you've had this experience where you end up striking a conversation, you're just like sitting back by the bar or something with someone for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and you're just talking shop with them. Like, I feel like you walk away with a really, really good idea of, their thoughts on code, which includes that sort of stuff. And so I always wanted to recreate those conversations and kind of those things and have it be guided so that there's a chance to answer questions too, but recreate at least those moments in the small. I don't know. I feel like I've never left an interview without being like, I don't know what this person thinks about code. I feel like I always do. You just kind of have to ask questions that elicit that. So like I said, one of the things, one of the techniques I use are those kind of reversible questions, which force people to like dig deep and introspect a little bit. Another technique I use is questions that start with "Tell me about a time," right? Which can be like more general stuff, like they'll ask like, "Tell me about a time you disagreed with management, or you disagreed with requirements," which is, by the way, a great question. Everyone should ask it. Yeah. Okay. What happened then, and what did you do, and so on. But then you could also ask that something like that in very technical, like, right? Tell me about a time when you had to use this in JavaScript, or right, like, and that question kind of phrasing the question that way, as opposed to like directly about the topic, automatically invites people to give opinions. And I actually specifically at the beginning of the interview give them permission to give opinions. My pattern is always like, this question is built in a way that I want to hear your opinions. So if you want to stop, ask questions, dig into something, rant, please by all means do. If I feel like we're getting off base, I'll stop you and bring you back. I'm not worried about that. I want to hear your strong opinions. Like that whole thing, I say that out in front of every single interview.
Yeah, I like it.
And I don't know, like, yeah, I encourage that in general. Maybe there's better ways to get that to rise to the surface.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I want to switch topics a little bit and just to target the people here who are maybe newer, a little bit better, who are job searching. Um, so we tend to get a lot of advice or a lot of thoughts about ways to bypass HR. Um, what are people's thoughts on best ways to do that? So, like, kind of the quintessential technique is, find someone you know in the company or a friend of a friend in the company, or do LinkedIn stalking for someone at the company and see if they're willing to pass your resume along. Any other particular techniques y'all have seen work well, or you think would work well within your experience?
Networking with people on LinkedIn.
So that's it. So, okay, networking with people, yes. When you say on LinkedIn, what exactly do you mean by networking with them on LinkedIn? You mean beyond just connecting with them and sending them a hi message?
So following some people, and especially people who are active posters on LinkedIn, active posters, right? And like they contribute thoughts out there, and you can engage with them, and you give your feedback. Oh yeah, this looks pretty cool, but then I tried this. You just kind of engage in. But not that many people are contributors on LinkedIn, right? Like not many people actually post things on LinkedIn, so it does take a good amount of digging, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of thing where you try to have a dialogue with people.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that's a thing. One thing that I've heard people recommend recently, which I think is interesting, is trying to set up what's called as a reverse interview, which is where you get someone, you ask them to give you like 15-30 minutes of their time, so you could ask them questions about that position or about working at the company in general. I think if you I mean I don't know. I don't have a good instinct because I haven't really started pushing people to do it yet. I don't have a good instinct to what percentage of people would say yes, but I feel like, well, 1 out of 5 people would be open to something like that. Like if you go directly to developers or something that work at a company, I mean, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, and then if you were to do that, like they're gonna forward your resume along unless you are just a complete asshole and asking questions or something, right? Like that's just a common interpersonal thing to do. Um, if you especially if you're asking smart questions. So that's a way I've been thinking about, like, increasing your chances within a particular role. Um, and what I've been talking about to students, like I've been saying, like, your opener for a conversation can always be something like, "Hey, I see you work here. I see the job requirements here. Like, these are pretty intimidating because you list 15 different technologies. Is it? I know sometimes they say these are wish lists. Like, can you give me some insight about what sort of technologies you think are really serious here and which ones are maybe not as big a deal? Like something like that. If someone pinged me about that, I'd gladly respond. Right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to, like, think of through other strategies where you could help people get around screening.
I feel like everybody who works in sales faces those challenges, and they've become exceedingly good at solving those challenges. So I would pick up any good sales book and try to find out what they do for networking,
Yeah.
which is not something I've done, but I see these techniques used on me, and it's always interesting, right? There's a lot of technology vendors. They're trying to get through the door, right? So they'll come in, they'll hit me up with a LinkedIn connection. I'll say, okay, fine, and then they'll hit me up with a message. Hey, I was wondering about your thoughts about topic X, Y, and Z, right? And try to give me a talk about something, and so often I ghost them because for me the intent is not there. I know what they're about, but I feel like in a better focused context, it may be, and I think it touches to what you just said, which is try to engage somebody kind of with a question about what they do. And then,
Yeah, and I mean,
but,
like the intent is probably still
Right.
visible, but it's still a conversation.
but salespeople are really good at this, and so I would encourage all of us to learn from them. Like, I know I want to do that. That's a personal goal for me. Like.
So that reminded me when I was, like I said, I was looking for a job, I was interviewing. I reread a book called Persuasion, and
Yes.
in it, yeah, the guy takes a bunch of he like synthesizes a bunch of like cognitive behavioral behavioral cognition theory, and then like a lot of field research with salespeople about like certain techniques and why they and kind of he tries to trace them back to why they work and stuff like that. So I actually have a notepad where I was like tracking stuff that I wanted to try in interviews. So like here, just like reading through, like one of them was like giving a personalized compliment. So rather than like something like your business seem interesting, like you say something like you seem to be running this company really well, right? So
Nice.
yeah, if you can call, and ideally if you can call out a specific policy they were involved in, like again, research seems to show that works. I didn't get to do it enough to like track it. Asking them for advice on something is a big one, right? I always love that. So like structure the language, so not so much that they're interviewing you, but that the interview is something y'all are creating together, right? Admitting a fault, following directly with however, like a strength, like I'm not the fastest person to get a thing hacked together. However, I really spend time thinking through requirements to spend time building the right thing to begin with, right? Something like that. This was a good one. Planting a positive associations of unity. You talked about this a lot in that book. So, like, just saying phrases that would associate, like, that would create this association of me, you, we're all part of the whole, right? So a phrase like, I feel like you treat everyone who comes through this door like a family, right? Like a phrase like that.
Nice.
Actually supposedly has like really, really huge impacts. So yeah, and always end with another compliment, that in case that one's not obvious enough.
Nice.
Yeah. That was my little notepad of like, here are things. I think after like the first 2 months, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try. Let's try some of these techniques. See, but yeah, I got some offers. I have no idea to what degree this contributed, but I do believe that this sort of stuff, it would work. You should be careful not to really be dehumanizing, because it's still about people, and you're not out to trick them. But as long as people have biases, you might as well use them in your favor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, man. That's a good way to put it.
Good.
Yeah. All right. And we filled up the hour again.
Yeah, absolutely. And this time, I think the recording will work out great, because last week we lost like the second half of the meeting, which I was not pleased about. Yeah, this was a great conversation, guys. Thanks everybody who joined in and pitched in, either just talking, or I see that there was a lot of activity in the chat window. That's pretty cool. Got folks engaged. I hope everybody got something out of it. Yeah, I took lots of notes myself. Things that I've been thinking about. So all great stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody, I hope to see you all back next week. And George, enjoy your birthday, man.
Bye, all.
All right.